We welcome you to another live edition of the Sports Box, brought to you by our friends at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and use the box at sign up for 10 points. And here we go.
Welcome everybody to our weekly presentation of the Sweet Tea on the Sports Box. As always, joined by Noah tonight. Really excited that it is Friday and, the weekend is just around the corner. We've got, obviously some great NFL football coming up on Sunday, conference championship games, which me and Noah are going to get into great depth on. A couple other things that we are going to talk on quickly tonight. Before we go ahead and, really jump into everything, we definitely wanted to touch on, something that really isn't, a sad topic, honestly. It's really sad. We lost a legend today in MLB, and honestly, it transcends sports, Noah. He's one of those guys where he's so much bigger than just a sport, just baseball. His legacy is so much more than just an athlete. And Hank Aaron, unfortunately, life's been kind of rough, not only last year, but now this year as well. And just absolutely rest in peace to Hank Aaron. I know a lot of people were devastated by the news today, and I'll let you discuss more on that, Noah.
It's really tough to talk about, obviously. I'm obviously a Braves fan, but that's never been why I've been such a fan of Hank Aaron. He's always been one of my heroes, for obvious reasons. We all know what he meant, not just to sports, but beyond that. He meant so much to the movement, if you would call it that, for African American athletes to get a chance to play, professional sports the same as a white man could. He was the first man ever to go from the Negro Leagues, as they called it at the time, to Major League Baseball, and he was a trailblazer for that. He was revolutionary because of that, and I agree, Josh. I think he is the greatest player of all time. He's one of the greatest players ever. But, as great as he was, and he really was great, you got to look at the stats. I mean, 25 times All-Star. He has the fifth highest WAR ever for an outfield player, 143.1. He broke the home run record by Babe Ruth, which many people thought was unbreakable. He finished with 755. The only person who has more is Barry Bonds, a 305 batting average. I think he has the career RBI record as well, most total bases ever. He won an MVP. He was a World Series champion. Like I said, 25 times All-Star. Have you ever heard of something like that? But, like I said, 3 times Gold Glove, 2 times batting title, all that, it's really minor in comparison to what he actually meant outside of sports. I think that, we all have something to owe to him. Without him, would we even have, these integrated leagues? I think you have to really question that, because the period where he played, it was not a good time. He received death threats for getting close to breaking Babe Ruth's record. People calling him the N-word and stuff, wishing he was dead because of just playing a game that he loved. And he had all the right in the world to be angry and resentful to people for that, and yet he never was. He was always class personified. Just no one has a bad word to say about him, and I think that's something you can't say about a lot of players who've ever played. It's just obviously very sad, but at the same time, it's nice to know he'll always be remembered for centuries, because, like I said, people who don't even know the first thing about baseball or sports, they know who Hank Aaron is. They teach about him in high school history classes, stuff like that. I learned about him. Obviously, I already knew about him, but, they teach about him because, like I said, he's a historical icon. And, what else can you say, really? He transcends sports. He's one of the very few that does that. He's not just a sports player. He's an icon, a historical icon. And, he's going to be remembered, long after we're gone, long after probably even our grandchildren are gone. He's a guy who's going to be remembered for centuries. And it's not going to be for what he did on the field, as great as that was. It's going to be for what he did during a time where our country was not in a very good place. What he did for African American, people everywhere, not just athletes. And yeah, absolutely, David. He's not just a GOAT player. He was really a GOAT person. And what else can you say? Just very sad to see him go, but one of my greatest heroes ever for everything he did for the civil rights movement, for sports as a whole, for our country. He will be missed.
Most definitely. And one thing that I want to add, Noah, is I think in sports we have a lot of players that we see as very talented athletes who really personify the sport itself. And then you have this whole other tier, and it's honestly limited to just very few people in my opinion. The only other person off the top of my head, without trying to do any kind of research, that even has somewhat of a comparable impact,
Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali, exactly. It's just there's people who are very great at their sport, had a huge impact on the sport itself, and then there's people that far outweigh the sport itself, and they're on a separate pedestal, way above the sport itself. And Hank Aaron is definitely one of those guys. And like you said, what he did for not only our country but an entire race of people, honestly, is absolutely phenomenal. And like you said, it's going to be a that we talk about long after he's gone, for reasons more than just sports.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, it's a bonus that he played for my team, and he was just so great. But like we said, so many people wanted him to fail. And like David says here, the man defied racism. He's one of the greatest humans to walk the earth, and he's just spot on. He really was. Like I said, he got so much hate for just playing a game that he loved. And he had all the right in the world to lash out at people, to hate people for that, and he didn't. And him and Jackie Robinson, two guys that just transcended sports, in my opinion. And yeah, it sucks. The baseball world, obviously it's been a bad last year for everybody, but the baseball world especially. I know we lost guys like Bob Gibson. I think we just lost Tommy Lasorda only a few weeks ago. Now Hank Aaron. Yeah, not a good time for baseball.
Most definitely. And I just hope that moving forward, for years to come, everybody just remembers and keeps alive the legacy and the impact that this man had. And before we go ahead and move on, no, I do want to put up a picture of Hank and just have a moment of silence for such a legendary and iconic man. All right. With that said, obviously, there's just so much to this man that we could spend our entire show discussing him. and he definitely is deserving of it. But we do want to talk some other sports topics with you guys tonight. One thing that I've been looking forward to all week that I wanted to discuss football related before we do go ahead and jump into playoffs and our predictions and all of that is my guy Phillip Rivers. Obviously, I've got the jersey on tonight. I couldn't just not wear it. He did announce his retirement this week. It is official. I do know that they're trying to hire him and get him on as a Monday Night Football host. They're probably offering him something crazy like $10 million a year. I know there's been some banter about it, but I don't expect him to take it. I think that, this is a guy who is very ready to move on, Noah, now that he has decided that he's done playing as a player, and he just wants to fulfill his second lifelong dream of being a high school football coach, which to me personally, I know you agree, we've talked about a little bit, is extremely humbling that, this guy who's made millions of dollars and played in the NFL for years and been a face of a franchise, when all that is said and done, he still is just as excited as ever and, views it as a lifelong dream to go down to Alabama and coach his son just like his father did in high school football.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's really awesome to see a story like that. It's not something I think that's very common. And yeah, Brian, we just talked about that. And I just want to say real quick, I think I said that Hank Aaron was the first to go from the Negro Leagues to the majors. That was actually Jackie Robinson. I don't know why I said that. I guess my emotions are all over the place. But yeah, about Phillip Rivers, we've talked about him so much on the show over the years. I know, he's the reason you got into football and stuff. We all had that one player. For me, it's Matt Ryan. For you, it's Phillip Rivers. And, I know Andrew's upset about it as well. I'm thankful for Rivers because he allowed the path for Mr. Breeze. Yeah, I mean, Phillip Rivers is a guy who, okay, never won a Super Bowl, but when I look at him, he's a guy that always left it on the field. He always gave everything he did. He never backed down from anybody. You see him, trash talking defenders and stuff like that. I agree with Brian. I think he's very comparable to a guy like Dan Marino. I'm obviously not saying he's as good as Dan Marino, but he was that guy that, consistent production for, well over 15 years. Unfortunately, never got that Super Bowl, but, just did very well for a very long time. And I know we're going to get into the whole debate. I don't even have to say what the debate is about, but, I hope that, he enjoys that post-football life he's decided to go for because it is a very good story. And hopefully he does well there. But yeah, he will be missed.
Most definitely. And like Noah said, we are going to discuss, a debate, which we shouldn't really have to explain, but we will when we get to it. What's been a really hot topic other than Phillip Rivers actually retiring regarding him, and a lot of, mainstream big name guys in the sports industry like Nick Wright and Stephen A. and Skip Bayless and all them. But before we do go ahead and cover that and, just talk about some career numbers and all that kind of stuff, I was able to find one short, really cool video that I think that, does a great job of personifying Phillip Rivers and, showing what he on the football field. And I wanted to go ahead and play that for everybody here in the stream real quickly. All right, so me and Noah are back. I hope everybody enjoyed that quick little video that I had for you guys. Sean saying thank you, Phillip Rivers. Um, yeah, man, Noah, I'm devastated that he retired, but at the same time, so thankful that he was able to play for so long. A lot of great moments shown in that video. One that David talked about was, him coming in did pave the way for Drew Brees to go down there to New Orleans, and he's another guy that we've been talking plenty about this week and the legacy that he had and the impact that he had for that community and, the franchise as a whole. So I know a lot of Saints fans are definitely very thankful for Phillip Rivers. Um, just some quick things that I saw in that video. It showed him having a last second win against the Colts in Indianapolis in the divisional round where he actually tore his ACL and MCL, which he later had removed to play the New England Patriots in the conference championship the following week. And he just went out there and absolutely put it all on the line. I think it just, really personifies one of the biggest things with him is just the Iron Man factor. Ever since he took over the starting position and back in 05 or 06, he just played the whole entire way through, didn't miss a game, second only to Brett Favre in career consecutive starts. And other than that, just a competitor week in, week out, regardless of what the stats were, the guy just gave us his all, and through a lot of questionable coaches and moving up there to LA when they really didn't have a fan base and like the people in San Diego loved him. He had spent his whole career there. Through it all, he never complained. He was never in the media pointing fingers, when he definitely could have been. He just prepared to win week in, week out and gave us all, us his all. And it showed me, just as a man and a human being to, kind of put the blinders to your circumstances in life and just put your best foot forward and not focus so much on what's going around you and just do the best that you possibly can. I'm going to miss him like crazy. As you said, he is the reason that, I did develop a love for football. I honestly kind of, just as a young kid, played with the Chargers on Madden just by chance. Honestly fell in love with LT first on Madden 05 or Madden 06. I was like, damn, this guy is fast. He can juke people out of his shoes. I used to run the halfback counterplay over and over, and it almost never failed. But it got me watching the Chargers. And once I did start watching them, I saw this 6'5", big, huge guy behind center in the pocket. He would get sacked and tell the defenders good hit or come on, man, always talking trash, but in a good way. As we all know, he never cursed, which is kind of really impressive in my opinion, that he could do it without cursing. And just everybody that's ever played with him says that he's a phenomenal man and a phenomenal teammate. He isn't just a good football player, and like somebody said earlier, he kind of is a Dan Marino for me, as I wasn't old enough to grow up with Dan Marino. One of the greatest guys to ever play quarterback, and unfortunately also one of the greatest quarterbacks to never win a Super Bowl. I could just go on, but obviously I'm going to miss him. And, just thank you, Phillip Rivers, for giving me my love for football. I owe my favorite sports number to you all the way up through high school, racing dirt bikes, all that kind of stuff. I always wore 17 every chance I could get because of him, and I just hope that you enjoy, life after football, coaching, and it'd be really awesome to see him eventually make it to a big time D1 college or, even the league. That would be really awesome to be able to see him on Sundays still.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. This is a guy, like you said, that laid it all on the line. I'm glad you mentioned that playoff game where, he literally tore his ACL and, he just kept on playing. This is a guy, like you mentioned, who, he's really never missed a start. That consecutive start streak, I don't think it ever ended the entire time he played. And this is a guy that, he went through a lot of punishment because he had some offensive lines that were not very good. And like you said, he did play with some talented players, like you said. LT played with Gates, Vincent Jackson, guys like this, but he did not have good coaches. They had Marty Schottenheimer. He went 14-2, and then they fired him. And then when you look at it, they replaced him with guys like Norv Turner, Mike McCoy, Anthony Lynn. We've talked about him a lot. They're coaches that have good moments, sure, but are they really good coaches? No, I wouldn't say so. And he never made playoffs except for when he lost, or he never made headlines except for when he lost in the playoffs, and that always angered me. I think that's a good point, Ryan. I think this is a guy. I saw Phillip Rivers one time throw for over 500 yards against the Green Bay Packers, and they lost the game. there's just sometimes where a player can do everything he can and he still comes up short. And I know you've talked about this, Garth, a lot. I know they had a game against the New England Patriots where Marlon McCree picked off a pass, and that would have been the end of the game. And instead of just going down and basically ending the game, he tried to return it, he fumbled, and the Patriots ended up winning that game. I don't remember exactly. I believe that was a conference championship game as well. I'm not too sure. If you could confirm that for me.
Yeah, it actually was the divisional round, but it was the season that we were 14-2, and it was at home.
Right.
So if we had won, we would have had home field advantage. We were the 1 seed. I believe the Pats were the 2 seed that year. But actually, I'm glad that you mentioned that because I did see earlier this week in a Chargers group people talking about Phillip Rivers, obviously, and that play, because that was one play that, possibly potentially could have kept him from playing for a Super Bowl. Play his best shot at it because he had LT and Gates in his prime. That defense was very, very good, led by Marty. And even the offensive line then was pretty solid and stout. But yeah, actually, there was a soundbite of Marty on the sideline before that drive started, telling his secondary, "Hey guys, if you intercept the ball, just go down. The clock's running out. There isn't a whole lot of time left. We have the lead. If we get a turnover, just go down, or we're going to chew the clock out with their offense." Unfortunately, they didn't listen, and Marty got fired after that season.
Yeah, and a big mistake in my opinion. We've talked a lot about the management. I think AJ Smith was the GM at that time. I think he made a big mistake there firing Marty. You come up short in the playoffs, a few times, sure, but this is a guy that was a very good coach, and I think they made a big mistake there. And in my opinion, if they didn't fire Marty, with the players that team had at the time, I think he could have actually won a Super Bowl. But obviously, we'll never know now. And obviously, we're going to get into a discussion about Phillip Rivers in a moment. But he's a guy I've always had great respect for. I've always kind of liked him because he always has that chip on his shoulder, like you mentioned, tough as nails. Played on that torn ACL. Never really missed a start. I got the stats up here, and I'm just looking at the box scores. 16 games played, all the way back to 2006. I mean, what can you say about that? That's just absolutely phenomenal. Ever since this guy got a starting job, he never once missed a start, and that's something you can't take for granted because all it takes is one bad play and bam, torn ACL, torn Achilles, and you're out. And this is a guy that never had that. And he certainly had some injuries. He played through them. I'm not saying he's like this guy, but he kind of reminds me of a guy you mentioned, Brett Favre, to where he can take a hell of a beating, yet he just keeps getting up, keeps challenging those defenders. He doesn't back down. And, I think that's something as a fan that a lot of people should really respect. And I've always respected that about him. And, gets in defenders' faces. He's not afraid of anybody. Yeah, I thought he was a very good player, and I assume we're going to get into the whole discussion we've all been waiting for now. If you want to introduce that.
Yeah, so obviously, as we all know, the big topic of this week was Rivers' retirement. A lot of heartfelt messages from around the league, just the utmost respect from, previous players and coaches to guys that he just recently played with on both the Chargers and Colts. I know I saw something from J.J. Watt where he said, one of the smartest players he's ever played against because he remembers playing him last season where Phillip Rivers called out a linebacker that was going to be blitzing and also told him after the play ended that, hey, what were you doing there? You never blitz or play the Mike position, so I knew you were coming. And J.J. Watt said, he called out the blitz, and then afterwards he was completely right about the guy being in the wrong position and just, absolutely smart. And I think, before we get into this, one thing that I do want to say that will aid, at least in my own opinion and argument, is one thing that I feel like doesn't get talked about very much, Noah, is the fact that the IQ on Phillip Rivers for football is unreal. Obviously, he's never been the most physically gifted. He can't really scramble. He's had a couple of iconic runs, maybe 2 or 3 in his whole entire career. Only 2 or 3 rushing touchdowns ever in his career. Obviously not a ton of yards. So he's, he definitely was never the most physically gifted, definitely big statured. So that was always a positive with him. But, that strange throwing motion that he developed, growing up with his dad coaching football and trying to throw a football that was, too big for him. And it kind of, it just stuck with him all the way up through. But the IQ, if you ever have gotten the chance to watch Phillip Rivers really closely, and you enjoy guys like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, who are just a field general out there, they're calling out blitzes, they're changing pass or run blocking, they're reading defenses and changing routes, and all the Omahas and green 88s, and all that yelling and arm work and trying to get defenses jump, all that kind of stuff. That's something that Phillip Rivers has always excelled at. And definitely one of my favorite things. I love when a quarterback, he can just tell he's like a coach out there on the field, because his ability to read defenses and diagnose coverages is just phenomenal. But with that said, the big debate for this week is Phillip Rivers a Hall of Famer or not? And honestly, it's probably split about 60-40 or even 50-50. There's a lot of people that say absolutely, without a doubt, he's going to wear a gold jacket one day. And then there's also some guys, and I know Stephen A. Smith, Nick Wright, Skip Bayless, potentially Colin. I forgot exactly what he said. I honestly don't pay too much attention to him, so I didn't really watch the video in depth. But, there is a lot of guys that say no way. His stats are due to his longevity. He wasn't ever really a top quarterback in the league, which I disagree with strongly, because back when he did have LT and Gates, in his actual prime before the franchise went really downhill, and even for a little bit, before age caught up with him, you definitely say he was a top 10 quarterback in the league. And even some seasons, he was definitely top 5 in the league. So I don't agree with that at all. And I feel like the people who actually vote, and I don't know if everybody here with us knows exactly how the Hall of Fame voting works, because it is kind of something that doesn't have light shed on it very often, Noah, is the fact that it's actually much like the Heisman, where it has a panel of 5 or 6 people, which, fun fact, Dan Fouts is actually the head of that panel. So that may definitely help Phillip Rivers if there is any kind of scrutiny. But basically, it's just a lot of writers from across the U.S. who follow NFL specifically very closely all get votes. And, the one thing is with them that I've seen, and a guy like Pat McAfee, who agrees that, he is going to be a Hall of Fame, pointed out, is they have the utmost respect, and the majority of them are all saying that, Phillip Rivers is going to be a Hall of Famer. But I'll let you touch on that, knowing what your opinion is, whether or not he should get in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. And I know there's a discussion about it. I understand some of the points about it. But like Josh says there, is he a Hall of Famer? I think he is. A lot of the arguments I see, I think there's some good ones. I think, people who say he was never, one of the elite quarterbacks in the league, or, he was never the best quarterback in the league. I guess you could say that. But this is a guy that still made 8 Pro Bowls. And considering he played in the same conference for many years as Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, that's not some insignificant achievement to make 8 Pro Bowls playing in the AFC. And one of the stupidest arguments I hear against it is he never won a Super Bowl. So what? So many players in the Hall of Fame never made a Super Bowl. And like Andrew says there, I will give my take real quick. The ring debate is pointless. Dan Fouts himself was the first ballot, and Dan Fouts never won a Super Bowl. No brainer to me, Hall of Famer, and maybe not first ballot, but second or third. I don't know if he's first ballot, but I do think he's Hall of Famer, and here's why. Like I said, the Super Bowl debate is stupid. I'm not saying he's Dan Marino, but Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl. Jim Kelly never won a Super Bowl. There are tons of fantastic players in the Hall of Fame who never won a Super Bowl. There are tons of bad players who did win a Super Bowl. It helps your case, absolutely, but to say it's an end-all, be-all is ridiculous in my opinion. In my opinion, when I look at it, and you look at the leaderboards for whatever statistic you want a quarterback to have, he's up there. He's 5th in passing yards. He's 5th in passing touchdowns. He has one of the highest completion percentages ever. I believe it's top 15. He has the 10th highest yards per attempt ever. He played in an era where it was arguably the greatest era for quarterbacks we've ever seen, with guys like Tom Brady, Manning, Roethlisberger, Aaron Rodgers. The list goes on. And yet, in that era, which had some of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen, he was still a guy that, in my opinion, I consistently thought was easily top 10, at his best top 5 quarterback. And when you look at the stats, you can never go down too far on a leaderboard to see Phillip Rivers on a list. And like Michael said, this is a guy who's an Iron Man. And I'm glad he mentioned that, because that brings me up to another point that I think detractors think, which is very stupid. His stats are longevity stats. Once again, so what? We keep players out of the Hall of Fame all the time because they didn't play long enough, because they got hurt or something like that. And then we're going to keep players out because they played too long. I just think that's very hypocritical and idiotic. You literally cannot criticize a player for playing too long and being available for his team. I just think that's such a stupid argument. It's probably even stupider than the ring argument, in my opinion, because we're going to criticize a player for playing for so long at a high level that he gets all these stats. I think that's stupid. So yes, a guy who's top 5 in yards and passing touchdowns. He's top 15 to 20 for any passing stat ever, pretty much, in an era where people were lighting it up, and a lot of those players from the same era are in that leaderboard above him. And yet he still made 8 Pro Bowls in an AFC which had, like I said, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, guys like that. Yes, he is a Hall of Famer, and to be honest with you, I don't even think it's debatable.
Yeah, and one thing that I want to talk about with that whole longevity and playing all those games consecutively for so many seasons is the fact that one thing that personally kind of gets me fired up, Noah, is the fact that a lot of people, when it comes to a very talented player, they're always so quick to say, yeah, but they can't stay healthy. They're always injured. They don't play full seasons. But then a player goes and plays full seasons for not 1 or 2, but 17 seasons, and then all of a sudden, oh, his stats are due to playing long. It's a shame that he was able to stay healthy, or maybe if he wasn't healthy, he played through an injury. So like you said, it is kind of very hypocritical. But one thing, I mentioned Pat McAfee. I did watch. He had like a 10-minute video on this subject, and he talked about quarterback is not only the most important position in the NFL, but it's also the hardest position to play, because teams are so quick to move on from a quarterback, if they're not playing to a high enough level. And he said that, what a feat that this man was the face of an entire franchise for 16 straight seasons, played at a high enough level to never have his starting position questioned, and then he went to the Colts for his 17th and final season, and there yet again played at definitely a high enough level to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. And he talked about how he only played for 8 seasons, and that those 8 seasons were hard enough. He couldn't even imagine doing 17. So he said, not even going over the stats, like you mentioned, 5th all time in yards and touchdowns, just by itself, if it isn't first ballot, it's definitely enough to get him into the Hall of Fame. And like I said, the people who are actually voting for Hall of Fame players, and not the Stephen A. Smiths, not the Nick Wrights, not the Skip Baylesses, the people who are actually voting actually have a say. Just huge positive things from them all week. And his peers as well. Like I said, all these guys that played alongside him or against him are all saying all week, one of the best to ever do a Hall of Fame. Gold jacket's going to look good on you, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, he may not make it in as a first ballot, which to me isn't the end of the world. I just want him to make it in, period, because I feel like he's definitely done enough to deserve it.
Yeah, and I think where those longevity arguers go wrong is, it'd be one thing if, say, Ryan Fitzpatrick, this is a guy who's played in the league forever, but it was because he bounced around a lot. He wasn't very good. When you look at a guy like Phillip Rivers, he played for so long because he was very good, and he played at such a high level for so long. And, I think Ryan's right there. You don't have to be one of the greatest of all time ever at your position, or a consistent MVP All-Pro guy to make the Hall of Fame. Can you list me 15, 20 quarterbacks better than Phillip Rivers? I don't think you can. And, over 63,000 passing yards, 421 passing touchdowns. And like you said, the people that know football the best, the Hall of Fame voters, not these, hacks like Stephen A. Smith or Skip Bayless who, wouldn't know a Hall of Famer from their ass. Those that actually know football think he's a Hall of Famer. And I just like to leave the whole debate on a question, Garth. If Phillip Rivers did win a Super Bowl, do you think anyone would argue against him being a Hall of Famer?
Absolutely not. I couldn't even see them arguing because I think if they did, we would all see them as crazy. Whereas now, yeah, they have that argument. Hey, you never won a Super Bowl, but like we both said, a Super Bowl ultimately is a team sport. Football is probably the ultimate team sport where it takes a complete team and not just one or two really good players. So yeah, it's a shame he doesn't have the Super Bowl. Does it keep him out of the Hall of Fame? I don't think it will. And another interesting fact is when it comes to positions not named quarterback, Super Bowls don't matter at all for the Hall of Fame. A guy like Larry Fitzgerald, who, yes, he has been to a Super Bowl game. He didn't win it, unfortunately. He's going to be in, obviously. Megatron, I don't know if he'll make it in. I think he should because of how much of a generational talent he was. But, if it gets to the point where they are voting and they're not going to say, hey, he didn't win a Super Bowl. So I get it. Quarterback is the most important position. But I feel like the Super Bowl shouldn't be the end-all, be-all as far as getting in or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think, holding a guy out for what is really a team accomplishment is just absurd. Like you said there, I think if he did have a Super Bowl, there'd be absolutely no argument against it. And some guys make it in because they're just so unbelievably dominant. A guy like Terrell Davis or Gale Sayers. Some guys make it in because they were so dominant, but they also did it for such a long time. A guy like a Peyton Manning, what Tom Brady will do. And then some guys get in because they were so good for so long. They never missed a game. The consummate professional. All the teammates love him. And I think that's the guy like Phillip Rivers. And yet, like you said, the stigma with the position he plays. Look at a guy like Frank Gore. Frank Gore's played in the NFL for forever. He has never won a Super Bowl. And yet I'd say probably 80 to 90% of people think Frank Gore is a Hall of Famer because he has, I believe, the third most, all scrimmage yards ever. He has more than, I know Barry Sanders. I think he has more than Walter Payton. He's only behind two other guys. I believe Emmitt Smith, and I actually don't remember the other one, but everyone agrees with him. So, the longevity arguments and Super Bowl arguments aren't used there. So why would they be used for Phil Rivers? I just think the arguments are really stupid. And I do think he is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I'm glad that we agree on that, Noah, honestly. But, we are already 40 minutes in, guys. I would like to talk about Phillip Rivers all night, not going to lie. But I would like to get into playoffs as that is a very, obviously big topic for this weekend. 2 games on Sunday that, a lot of us should be really excited for. On the NFC side, we have 2 of the older guys going at it in Rodgers and Brady. And on the AFC side, we have 2 of our up and coming, some of the best quarterbacks in the league going at it with the Chiefs and the Bills and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Much like previous weeks discussing playoffs, we are going to go in order of games here. The first game being Tampa Bay up there in Lambeau. One thing that I know there's definitely a very varying opinion on this to whether or not the weather will have any sort of impact or not. I know our guy Mike will say Brady's played in the cold. He's used to it. Absolutely agree. I don't think I've said once that this game is going to affect Tom Brady because he's definitely prepared to go out there and play in the cold. But it could impact the rest of the team. I feel like whenever warm weather teams travel to cold, it doesn't make them play terrible. That's not really what I'm getting at here, but it does definitely, it's a different feel for them. I feel like it slows guys down a little bit. Definitely makes guys shy a little bit away from contact because, man, it hurts to get hit. Playing football in the Northeast myself, it hurts to get hit in the cold. It's definitely not anything that's fun or pain-free. I think it definitely evens the matches in terms of, if you have an offense that isn't that good versus one that is really good, it can definitely close the gap there. But yeah, I definitely feel like it's going to have some sort of impact on the game. I can't say there's going to be no impact. We're going to get some snow and only 30, 32 degrees out. But yeah, no, before we, jump into some of our keys of the game and specific players and all that, what's your opinion as far as the whole weather argument goes with that game?
Well, obviously, I think there's some validity to it when you look at a team like Green Bay who play in this weather, for so long, and a lot of these players live there. They're used to it compared to Tampa, where it's always pretty nice, pretty sunny. I definitely wouldn't say that's an invalid argument. I'd say maybe it doesn't mean as much as a lot of people might think because like you said, a guy like Tom Brady, he's played in this before. I think you can definitely bet he's going to get these guys ready for this game. He's going to say, you know what, yeah, it's going to be cold, so what? You got to go out there and give your all. And so, yeah, I mean, to say it's not a factor would be ridiculous. Um, but I don't know if it'd be a deciding factor. I think we're going to see both teams, go out there, give it everything on the field. I think these are two very talented teams that you've got right here. The Bucks, obviously, the surprise team a bit. We both picked the Saints, and the Bucks actually got that game. They were down, and they got it done when it mattered the most. Tom Brady is a guy that you do not want to bet against when he gets deep into the playoffs. And Aaron Rodgers, he's looking for that second Super Bowl because that would really help his legacy. It's one thing to have one, but if you can get two, that really helps your case. So this is, and I know Ryan's in here. I know he's a Packers fan. This is going to be a really close game. We're obviously going to dive into all the keys in a bit, but yeah, the weather's going to be a factor. And I got to say, personally, I really love snow football games. I think they're fantastic. So I'm really hoping for a nice snowy game, and hopefully, both teams lay it all on the line.
Yeah, and for me personally, it is kind of a game that's going to have a weird feeling to it, just because, I am an Aaron Rodgers fan, but I'm also a very big Tom Brady fan. So it's kind of like, I want both these teams to win, but at the same time, I don't want both of these teams to lose as well. Um, but yeah, with that, first let's talk a little bit about the offensive side of the ball for both of these teams, Noah. I got right here the offensive leaders for both. I don't think we have to talk too much. It's obviously Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. Like I said, two of the older guys in the league still going at it, still playing, late into January for a chance at yet another Super Bowl. Like you said, for Aaron Rodgers, it would be his second. And Tom Brady chasing what seems absolutely insane to me, potentially a seventh ring should he make it and win. But yeah, you look at the teams here. The Packers offense is very balanced. They've kind of got a running back by committee, but Aaron Jones definitely stands out with 1,100 yards on the season, 9 touchdowns and 5.5 yards per carry. So, this is an offense that you got to pay attention to both the run and the pass game. We saw last week where the Packers were able to get some really big chunk plays down the field, and they weren't always to Davante Adams. I know, I got him highlighted there as the receiving leader, but there is some other guys, on that offense that can score some points in terms of the passing game. So should you slow down Davante Adams, there's still other guys out there, and you definitely can't cheat and play just the run. And then on the other side of the ball, the Buccaneers were running the football really well, and I think they did a pretty good job last week as well. Still not really sold on Fournette, though, like we both said last week. I don't think he's that caliber of a running back that's going to win you a game or come up big when you need him most. I think he's just kind of good enough to get by and not make you one-dimensional the whole game. So I'm really interested to see, because I know in talking to a really good friend of mine who is a diehard Packers fan, he told me this week that the one thing he is the most worried about, Noah, is the run defense. Should the Bucs be successful there? So I think that that's definitely a key for the Packers, is how well can you defend the run. But I'll let you talk a little bit, Noah, on the offensive side of the ball for both of these teams.
Well, I think the main thing for Tampa Bay, like you mentioned, we're not really sold on Leonard Fournette, but Ronald Jones was cleared for this game, and I think Ronald Jones is a very good running back. I'm a big fan of him. I think he'll definitely do a better job than Leonard Fournette did. I think, like I said, the experience of a Tom Brady in situations like this is something you can't understate. The main thing I would look for the Bucks on offense is Mike Evans. We mentioned it last week. Mike Evans had to do well against Marshawn Lattimore for them to have a chance that game. Well, they won the game, but Mike Evans only had one catch for 3 yards and a touchdown. It's really honestly weird at this point how he cannot do well against Marshawn Lattimore in these games. And we talked about him last week. That Jair Alexander, he is legit. If Mike Evans has another game like that, in my opinion, I think the Bucks will really have a hard time. but he can't be getting shut down forever. I think he will probably have a good game this game. I did actually see Antonio Brown was ruled out for this game, so they're gonna have to rely on Evans, Godwin, and probably a guy like Scotty Miller in this game. I think you might see a lot of two tight end sets with guys like obviously Gronkowski, but also they still have Cameron Braid. I think OJ Howard is still there, and like David says, Ronald Jones, he's been on fire all season. He is a good running back. I'm a big fan of him, so the fact he's going to be raring to go for this game is a big thing for the Bucs. And when I look at the other side, I look at the Packers offense. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is the MVP in my opinion, just been absolutely fantastic all year. I think Aaron Jones, like you said, this is a guy who he obviously puts up great numbers, but he's very efficient. 5.5 yards per carry, I believe it is. Scores touchdowns at a high rate. And I mean, Devontae Adams, what can you say about this guy? 18 touchdowns a year, 115 catches, 1,374 yards, as the stats say there. Just absolutely incredible receiver. I think him against that Bucs secondary, in my opinion, the Bucs have a good run defense, so they might be able to slow down Aaron Jones more than most teams could. Their secondary is something I'm not really sold on. I know they played well against Drew Brees last week, but I also saw them the week before play Taylor Heineke, who, a few months ago was playing fantasy football, and that was the closest he was to the league. And, they struggled in that game. So what is that secondary that's a bit inconsistent going to do against a guy like Devontae Adams? And, they still have other guys like Marquez Valdes-Scantling. They have some other guy. I'm just going to call him Brown. I don't even know how to say his first name, but I know who I'm talking about. I know he scored last week. Like David said there, I do think the Packers are the more complete team. This is going to be a very interesting matchup. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it. But I think we both went 3-1 in our picks last week. These picks are really difficult this week. I'm not really sure who I'm going to pick just yet, so I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, and the guy there, I'm not going to even try to pronounce his first name because I'll butcher it, but I know who you're getting at there with the Brown guy. Another guy at wide receiver is Alan Lazard. He's another guy that seems like here and there he has some really big plays. Definitely a guy that can make that secondary pay should they, play too much double on Devontae Adams. But one thing tonight, that I wanted to point out, because it is a very offensive league, offensive players do get a lot of the credit. I wanted to talk a little bit about some key defensive players and some guys that for both of these teams I think need to have a really big game. And one guy you mentioned there, because we have been talking about him, is this guy right here, Jair Alexander. I got some numbers here that I'm going to throw up. Absolutely phenomenal. He's really developed to be one of the best cornerbacks in the league. As you can see there, he allowing only second best yards per play in the league to Jalen Ramsey and fourth in the league in passer rating allowed. This is just a guy who is, unless he has an off game, is going to make life really tough for Mike Evans. And which you said, Antonio Brown has been ruled out. So there's even more pressure on Mike Evans to be a solid receiving force for Tom Brady, and be a target that he feels comfortable throwing to all game that can get open and create separation. And just like playing Marshawn Lattimore last week, it's not going to get too much easier for him. So I think that for the Packers defense, they're going to really need him to play a solid game because he probably is going to be playing Mike Evans most of the game. The Packers do like to play a lot of man coverage with two deep over the top because their corners and Jair and also Darnell Savage are very good. They're very capable of playing man coverage, and covering number 1 and number 2 wide receivers in the league. So I'm going to expect a lot of man coverage out of them so that they can, put some pressure up in the box and potentially try to slow down that run game. I am glad that you mentioned Jones will be back for the Buccaneers because I hadn't been paying attention to the injury report too closely. I did not know if he was going to be back or not this weekend. Obviously, huge help for the Bucs. But yeah, as far as this game goes, Noah, I feel like if the Packers defense can force a couple of turnovers on Brady, that's definitely going to be a deciding factor in the game. And I think just like that for the Bucs, it's going to be the same thing. I think this game is ultimately going to come down to turnovers and what team does and doesn't, turn over the ball. Because I feel like both of these teams are very good at eating up clock, controlling time of possession. Both teams have great run games. And both teams get a lot of help out of their defense as far as turnovers, as we saw with the Bucs against the Saints last week. But yeah, with that said, on the other side, and I wasn't really able to find too many things to throw up here as far as individual players. So I'm going to go ahead and throw up Antoine Winfield Jr., but I'm going to say that the Buccaneers secondary in general, I need to see a big game from them, Noah. I don't know how much last week was so much that they played really well, or if Drew Brees just didn't have, that good of a performance. I think it's a little bit of both, but they're going to have to, perform at that kind of level again this week. They're definitely going to have to try and get some turnovers from Aaron Rodgers, who on the year, as we saw the numbers, has not really turned the ball over with only 5 interceptions. But yeah, I want to hear a little bit more from you, Noah, before I make my pick on this game. But definitely for me, it's going to come down to the turnover battle.
Yeah, and obviously David's in here. Maybe he can give us some more insight on whether that was just a bad game by Drew Brees or maybe the Bucs secondary really did have a good game. But yeah, I mean, Jair Alexander, we talked about him a lot. Just a fantastic player. I think he's going to be the key player for the Packers on defense. I think he's the first corner, in my opinion, that I look at that is truly elite. I don't think they've had a guy like that since Charles Woodson, and their secondaries have been really suspect for a long time. I think with guys like him, Darnell Savage and Kevin King, who is actually questionable for this game, I assume he'll play. I think that they do finally have, a very good secondary. And like you mentioned, Antoine Winfield Jr., he's also questionable for this game. We'll see if he's going to play with that ankle injury. I assume he is. Um, it's a really tough matchup for me on paper, and I think I saw in that comment there, I think David said that their run defense for the Bucs is slacking lately, which isn't good because that I think is one of their biggest strengths because I find their secondary to be a bit suspect. This is a really tough game for me to pick. Remember that Rodgers is notorious for not throwing picks with only 89 career picks. Yeah, absolutely, Ryan. But you also have to look at it this way. Tom Brady isn't that guy either. Neither of these guys, they take care of the ball. Tom Brady this year, I think, threw 40 touchdowns to 12 picks. So he takes care of the ball as well. But Aaron Rodgers is obviously, the best ever at doing that because he has career low interception numbers. It's ridiculous. I think the main thing is, like we said, both of these teams, they have good running games. They have true, star-studded number one receivers and good guys to go along with them. The quarterbacks, you can say whatever all the praise in the world for them. Both defenses are pretty good. When I look at this game, oh my God, picking it's so tough. I think early in the game or early in the week, I said the Bucs will actually win this game. And, it's really a 50-50 pick for me. I think you can't underestimate the experience of a guy like Tom Brady. And let me just read this out real quick from David. He says, Breeze played bad this week. He made bad throws and bad decisions. The Bucs defense capitalized. Unfortunately, Breeze choked last week. I love him, but it's time to retire. And, maybe we'll talk about that in the near future. We'll see if he truly does go to that NBC job. But, yeah, and I think you need to have those defenses that can capitalize on poor games. But is Aaron Rodgers going to have a bad game? I would not bet on that. I think he's going to have a very good game. And if that secondary doesn't play up to standard, if they played like they did against Washington a few weeks ago, they will have a rough time. If they can't slow him down, Aaron Jones, he's going to do his thing. Sure, that Bucs run defense has been slack, and I still think they'll do okay. But you can't completely stop a guy like Aaron Jones. That guy's just a monster. And like you said, they have a running back by committee. I don't see Jamal Adams in the injury report or anything like that, so I assume he's playing. He's a very good player. A.J. Dillon, I'm not sure how much they use him as well, but maybe he'll have a role as well. I'm probably going to change my mind from my earlier pick and pick the Packers just because I think, like you said, going to Lambeau, whether or not that's a really tough place to play, it'll be a little easier with no fans, but I think it'll still be a big, it'll be a nice comfort zone for the Packers players, and maybe that weather will play a factor against the Bucs. And I just think when I look at the Bucs, they're a fantastic team. Don't get me wrong, but I see more holes with them than I see with the Packers. When I look at the Packers, I see a team that has a fantastic offense, a good running game, good offensive line, even with no David Bakhtiari. And their defense is just solid all around. When I look at the Bucs, I can think, okay, I'm not not really sold on the pass defense. I think that the rushing defense has been hit or miss all year. I think their defense is probably a little overrated, even though it's good. I think Bruce Arians, while he's a good coach, is probably a little overrated and overthinks it sometimes. I think that Mike Evans, he's shown that in big games, sometimes he doesn't come up as much as you like. I think that, Leonard Fournette as a second running back probably isn't as good as you'd like him to be. I just see flaws with the Bucs that I don't see with the Packers. And, I think that score prediction by David there, 34-27, is pretty fair. I'd probably go for a shootout as well. I'm probably going to go something like, 34-31 Packers. But I will probably pick the Packers. I'm going to change what I said earlier in the week. I'm going to pick Green Bay in this game.
And I got to agree, Noah. I'm also going to go with Green Bay, and I'll tell you guys why. Much like Noah said, when you look at the teams from top to bottom, with the Packers, I don't think that there's a unit that you can pick out and say, this unit is a major liability. And I think that as far as the trenches go, which is a huge, huge factor for every NFL game, especially when you get late in the season and playoffs, I got to give the edge in the trenches to the Packers because even with Bakhtiari out, that offensive line is still very, very good. Rodgers doesn't get pressured a whole lot, and he gets sacked even fewer because of his ability to get out of the pocket and extend plays, which Tom Brady on the other side, phenomenal quarterback, but he definitely doesn't have the running capabilities of Aaron Rodgers. So I think as far as Packers offensive line, Buccaneers defensive line, I give the edge to the Packers offensive line. And then, Buccaneers offensive line versus that Packers defensive line, I got to go Packers there as well for reasons of Kenny Clark, Zadarius Smith, who has 12.5 sacks on the season. That guy is an absolute monster. He's one of those guys that constantly gets after the quarterback, and you don't really hear too much about him except for when his team is playing in prime time and the announcers, show some love to him. So, definitely giving the edge to the Packers in the trenches. Like I said, obviously it's not going to be the home field advantage that we're used to with Lambeau with a sold out crowd. I do believe they will have some fans, but obviously it's not going to be anywhere near full capacity. So I think that home field advantage will have a little bit of an effect, definitely not a huge effect. But if I'm the Packers, I'd much rather be playing at home in Lambeau in the cold regardless. So I think that that's definitely something that, is an advantage in their favor. And, just the combination of all of that, I definitely don't think it's going to be a shootout. A blowout. I think Tom Brady is going to come to play. I think the Bucs are, going to play pretty good most of the game. I think it'll be close. Something like 34-31, is definitely a very realistic score prediction for me. I think Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady both have great games. But if I had to pick a team that's going to have a costly turnover for whatever reason, I'd have to say Bucs. And like I said, I think that's going to probably come down to it. Who has that one or two big-time turnovers that ultimately results in less points on the board. And I just got to go Packers here in a close one at home.
They just look so good, man. And, even with some really good Packers teams in the past, you could look at their team and see holes. You could say, okay, their defense isn't that good. Their offense is really relying on, Jordy Nelson at receiver. Outside that, they don't have a lot. Aaron Rodgers basically has to have a great game for them to have a chance. And I just don't see that with them this year. And, as Michael says, Vita Vea is back for the Bucs. I know I saw Ndamukong Suh was on the injury report for a non-injury related issue. I'm not too sure what that's about. But, yeah, like I said, I think this Packers team, it's one of the first I've seen in a very long time where I don't look at it and see obvious weaknesses. Obviously, no team is perfect, but they have no glaring weaknesses that I see, and I think with the Bucs you can kind of see some. So, yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it's going to be a shootout, very entertaining game. Quarterback duel, which, you got to appreciate. Two of the greatest quarterbacks ever are going at it for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. Tom Brady wants to win his 7th. Aaron Rodgers wants to add his 2nd and really move up the ranks for a lot of people, including myself. If he wins another one, he will shoot up my all-time list. But, yeah, a lot is at stake in this game, obviously, not only to go to the Super Bowl, but, legacies are on the line here. And it's going to be an absolute thriller. I'm going to pick the Packers. As a pretty neutral fan, I'm just hoping for a fantastic game here.
Yeah, and it's actually going to be the first meeting of these two quarterbacks in the playoffs. And, as you mentioned, two of the all-time best to ever do it. So it's really awesome to just be able to see these guys, regardless if you're a fan of either team or hate both teams. at least we're seeing two of the, greatest guys to ever play the position get to battle it out for a chance at a Super Bowl appearance. And one last thing I do want to say, Noah, before we jump over to the Bills game, and I know we got Mikey in here. Real excited that he's going to be in here for this Bills-Chiefs game discussion. I just want to give huge props to Matt LaFleur. I forget the exact number, but he is one of a very limited amount of guys who have made it to back-to-back championship games in their first two seasons with a team. I think that him and Rodgers have really gelled well together. They have a really good grasp of the offensive scheme that they run. And, you watch them, especially here late in the season, there isn't really those head-scratching play calls that you go, hey, well, why'd they call that? That play made no sense. Or, just little mishaps and miscommunications. You just don't see it with these two guys. Like I said, I expect it to be a close game, but man, if that Bucs defense does not come to play, in particular that Bucs secondary, these two guys are going to make them pay. So Bucs secondary's definitely got to show up. Like I said, though, I don't expect it to be a blowout. I think the Bucs are going to come to play, and we're going to have a close game.
Absolutely agree. It's going to be really good, and like you said there, Matt, before we got to give them a lot of credit. The Packers were on a downward slope in 2018, and they made a big call to fire Mike McCarthy, who'd been there for a decade, and yet Matt LaFleur's coming in the last 2 years, like you said, back-to-back conference championship games. Aaron Rodgers is probably going to be the MVP this year. They work really well together. And, Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers, they did some really good things together. But the fact is that, there was a bit of a tension there. And I think with LaFleur and Rodgers, they get along really well. And it's a deadly combination. And like you said, that Bucs defense better bring their A game, because if they have an off game, Rodgers will shred them.
Yeah, and so as you guys heard, me and Noah are both going Packers in a close one at home. I believe, were we perfect on our picks last week, Noah? Or did we miss just one game?
We missed one because the Saints just decided to lose to the Bucs.
Okay. Yep, I knew there was one in there. But yeah, so we're both going to go with Packers, much like last week. We did agree across the board. But with that, and as I said, Mikey is in here, so I'm really excited. We've got Bills and Chiefs, our Sunday night game, 6:40 kickoff in Kansas City. Chiefs favored by 3. Breaking news of the day, Patrick Mahomes has been cleared to play. I don't think that he's going to be 100%, Noah. Not so much the concussion, but before he did get removed from the game for that concussion, the foot. I think we saw him starting to hobble around, and he definitely wasn't looking like himself out there. I don't know what extent that foot injury is. Maybe it's completely healed by now, but if it was something mild to serious, I've struggled with a couple of foot injuries myself. They're definitely nothing fun to have, especially when you got to be on your feet. You got to be able to run around. It's just very painful. So that's definitely going to be something to, keep an eye on in that game is, A, Patrick Mahomes is playing, but B, at what level? Is he 70%, 80%? We'll have to wait and see there. But yeah, on the offensive side of the ball, obviously, we've got Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes going at it. For Patrick Mahomes, it'd be his second Super Bowl appearance, and for Josh Allen, his first. I know there's a lot of Bills fans out there that hope that they get their Buffalo Bills to the Super Bowl on that arm of Josh Allen, who has been absolutely phenomenal this season. We've talked a lot about him, and he's definitely in that MVP talk with Aaron Rodgers. But yeah, with the difference here is we have two running backs who, are definitely very good, but neither one have stats that, are on par with the two running backs in the other game that we were talking about. Devin Singletary, only 687 yards and only 2 touchdowns. But at the wide receiver position, man, Stephon Diggs, now, as we've all mentioned, phenomenal season, led the league in receiving. I look for him to have a big game here. When you look at the Chiefs' defense, like I've said all season, it's good. It's not great. I don't think that they have a DB who's going to be able to shut him down all game. And, if you're a Bills fan rooting for the Bills in this one, you got to hope that Stephon Diggs has a big game, because that's definitely going to help keep you guys in what should be an offensive shootout, as these are two of the highest powered offensive teams that we have.
Yeah, and when I look at this game, obviously the big news, like you said, is Patrick Mahomes cleared to play. I think you're right that we can't expect him to be 100%, but even him at 80, 90% is still way better than most quarterbacks in the league. So you got to appreciate the fact that this game, two of the best playmakers in the league at quarterback with Mahomes and Allen. And one of the other game had those two wily veterans going at it. With legacies on the line. These are two guys who are still making their way in the NFL, still young and improving, but already fantastic players. I think that's a fantastic thing to see for the game. I think, like you said, Stephon Diggs had a fantastic season. The Chiefs secondary is going to have to, play him tight. They have other good options, like obviously Cole Beasley, Gabriel Davis. I think, like you said, neither of these teams has that, dominant, oh, you're going to get it 300 times a season Derrick Henry running back. But they both have good running back by committees. Obviously Devin Singletary. I think they like to use Zachary Moss as their kind of receiving back out of the backfield. Clyde Edwards-Helaire can just do it all at running back, and then Le'Veon Bell as well. So, yeah, I appreciate the support, David, but yeah, this is going to be a great game. It's another game I'm really torn on picking as well. Cornerback Bashad Breeland, running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back Bell, wide receiver Sammy Watkins, and Rashad Fenton are all questionable for the Chiefs, and Willie Gay is out. Well, you know what, Michael? You kind of stole my thunder because I actually had the injury report up, and I was ready to talk about all of that, but you're absolutely right. They have a lot of good players questionable. Like you said, Watkins, Clyde, Bashad Breeland's one of their top cornerbacks, and Le'Veon Bell. So both their running backs are actually questionable for this game. I assume they'll play, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it again, Garth, because it's another game where I'm really split on it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, most definitely a game that I also feel like is very hard to pick, Noah. I will say that one of my biggest keys in this game is going to be what defense can perform better and what defense is going to be able to come up with. Probably won't be very many, but a stop down the stretch. I feel like these are two offenses that both can score at will when they're playing their best football. I expect both offenses to have really big games, and it's definitely not going to be a defensive game as far as I'm concerned. And when I do look at both defenses and, I kind of go through the personnel and I think about what I've seen all season out of both of these defenses and, which one, if I was a betting man, would I have to put money on to come up with the big time stop? I got to go with the Bills. Out of the two, I asked Mike because I wanted some insight from a Bills fan, who is the key guys on that Bills defense for this game and who's going to help them, come up with potentially a really big game deciding stop. And the two guys that he gave me is Ed Oliver, and his reasoning there was the fact that, he's going to have the task with trying to get after Pat Mahomes, much like Aaron Rodgers is very capable of getting out of the pocket and, extending plays. And we've all seen the crazy throws that, he can make when you do give him time to get out of the pocket. So, he's going to be tasked with getting after him. And should he get in the backfield, trying to keep him somewhat contained and not, being able to extend plays and create time for guys to get open. And then the other guy that he mentioned, I'm glad that he mentioned this because I probably wouldn't have thought of it if I hadn't asked him, is this guy Matt Milano at linebacker. He's going to be tasked most of the game with covering Travis Kelce, which by no means is an easy task. And I wish the best for Matt Milano. I don't think he's going to be able to shut him down. I don't really think there is a linebacker in the league that can shut down Travis Kelce because he is that good. But if there's a guy that, might have a big play here or there and, is going to provide a spark for that defense, he's definitely very capable. But yeah, for me, Noah, like I said, if I got to bet on one defense to come up with a stop, because like I said, I don't expect either defense to have a phenomenal game, I'm going to have to go with the Bills. And I'm not going to make my pick quite yet. I want to, keep talking about this game some more. But, definitely gives me some confidence in the Bills as far as I'm concerned there.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with you at that point. When I look at the defenses, I do think the Bills are a little bit better. I think the Chiefs are kind of an opportunistic defense. Obviously, guys like Tyron Matthew and the secondary is very good. I think Frank Clark is a very solid defensive line. But when I look at the Bills defense, I just see good players all around. You mentioned Ed Oliver and Matt Milano. I look at guys as well like Tremaine Edmonds. We haven't even mentioned Trey White, who's easily one of the best corners in the league.
Wow.
Yeah, Jordan Poyer is a very solid, underrated safety. I know Mikey actually thinks he's better than Tyron Matthew. I think Micah Hyde is still there. I think he's a very good safety as well. They just have solid players all around, and I think their defense. Bills are 14th, and I think Chiefs are 16th in defense. Mikey says so. Yeah, neither of these teams have an outstanding defense, but they're both opportunistic. I think when I look at this game, it's going to be very close. And, I know you haven't officially picked yet, and I know the Chiefs are big favorites in this game. But the more I think about it, and like you said there, I think if I had to pick one defense to make, that key stop, and I don't think there'll be many, I think this would be a shootout like the other game. I would probably pick the Bills to get that key stop. So, Josh Allen has emerged as a superstar at quarterback. They're balanced in the running game, running back by committee. Stephon Diggs is an absolute monster. And then guys like, obviously Cole Beasley. I know Gabriel Davis was on the injury list. I assume he'll play. I think they have guys like, Dawson Knox at tight end, I believe it is, who's a playmaker as well for being so young. I'm probably going to pick the Bills in this game, which, I never thought I'd say because I think the Chiefs are Super Bowl favorites, but I just have a feeling about this Bills team. They've been under a lot of adversity. That Colts team gave them everything they had, and yet they made no mistakes in that game and they pulled it out. That Ravens team played them very tough, but then when they needed a big play by their defense, they got a 105-yard pick six off of Lamar Jackson. And I think, plays like that are going to be obviously key. They showed they can make a massive play when they need it. And I think they probably will make a major play in this game that the Chiefs defense probably won't. So I'm going to look at a, score something like 27-20 for the Bills.
Yeah, and before I get into my pick here, Mike saying that they're both bend not break defenses, very nerve-wracking. Yeah, most definitely. Like I said, I don't expect either defense to play phenomenal all game. Very high-scoring game, I believe, shootout offensively. But like I said, I feel like there is going to be a moment in the game where one team is going to have a stop. And, if I had to pick one team over the other, I got to go with the Bills defense for all those guys that Noah pointed out. One guy real quickly that I do want to mention on the Chiefs side of the ball, and for whatever reason, I couldn't find a GIF of him in a Chiefs uniform. The one I found was unfortunately too big. They wouldn't let me upload it here. But this guy right here, Tyron Matthew, I do believe he is tied for third in the league for interceptions on the season. As Noah said, a very opportunistic defense. If you give them a chance, they're going to make you pay. They're just not going to play elite all game. That's a guy I look forward to for the Chiefs because I feel like he's going to have the task of, playing a lot of help coverage on Stephon Diggs, trying to keep the Bills from, having these big explosive plays downfield. Josh Allen has an absolute cannon, as we all know. He can really unwind the ball and let it fly 60, 70 yards down the field. And, the guy is going to be tasked with, trying to cover center field and prevent those deep plays is Tyron Matthew. And I believe they'll also use him some in blitzing because he is a very crafty player who can get after the quarterback and create some pressure. For the Chiefs side, I got to go with him as, a guy who's got to perform really well on the defensive side of the ball. But with that said, Bills Mafia, it is your time. Believe, baby, because the Buffalo Bills, I just got a feeling, are going to pull this game off. And our guy, Michael Bradley, is going to have to jump through a table in excitement. The Bills are going to win this game. You heard it here first, guys. I got to go Bills here in an offensive shootout. Final score of something like 42-35, 38-35, somewhere in that neighborhood. Josh Allen, he's just – I feel like it's just not only the Bills' year, but Josh Allen's year. What a story for this kid. He's gotten better each and every year after so much criticism and so much doubt. I love to see it. I love to see guys, prove all the doubters wrong. I'm going Bills, Noah. I'm going Bills.
Yeah, and like you said there, Mike, he's going to have to go through a table, probably one that's on fire because he's been putting this off for a long time, man. I challenged him to do it when they won the division. He chickened out. 2 playoff wins later, you still chicken out. When are you going to show you're actually legit and just not all talk? So, yeah, Mikey, the Bills got a lot on the line, but so does he. I think, like we said, it's going to be a really tight game. I think it's going to be an absolute shootout. I think it's 27-24, something like that. It's going to be a very tight game. But like we said, the Bills defense, they're both bend but not break defenses, but I see more balance on the Bills defense when I look at it. And you mentioned Tyron Matthew there. I think he's their main playmaker. But when I look at their corners, looking at the depth chart, their starters are Charvarius Ward and Antonio Hamilton. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know a lot about these guys. I know Antonio Hamilton, they signed him before the season, and then when I look at Charvarius Ward's stats, this is a guy who started 13 games, had no picks, 6 pass deflections, 1 sack, and 51 combined tackles. Nothing that really jumps off the page at you as this is a true, starting cornerback in the league. Whereas, Trey White, I mean, he's incredible. And I think if I had to pick, one defense, Trey White versus Tyreek Hill or, Charvarius Ward against Stephon Diggs, you're obviously going to pick the former. So, yeah, I think the Bills are a really solid choice, and it's Arjari Sneed has a 53 passer rating for the Chiefs. He's their best right now. Okay. Thank you very much, Mike. Yeah, I'm just looking at the depth chart. I can't say I know a lot of these guys, but yeah, they just don't have that superstar besides Tyron Matthew in the secondary, in my opinion. Whereas when you look at the Bills secondary, like we said, Trey White, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, they just have really solid players all around. And I think the Bills defense will make that opportunity stop, like we said. And it's kind of odd, we had a lot of disagreement in the first week, hence why I went 5-1 and you went 2-4. But last 2 weeks we completely agreed on all these picks. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, there really hasn't been any of a chance for me, to try and make a comeback to even out our total record, which, once is all said and done, we'll have to take a look at that, final record just for fun's sake. But yeah, now I'm looking at the first time these teams met this season earlier on. And what I see is that the Chiefs actually surprisingly really held the Bills to not so much offense and honestly, really made them struggle in the pass game. Stephon Diggs only had 6 catches for 46 yards. I'm not going to put too much weight into that because it's it's a regular season game way towards the beginning of the season. But what I'm getting at here with that is I definitely don't expect the same performance, from the Bills offense and the Chiefs defense. I feel like, win or lose, the Bills are going to have a very good offensive game, in particular Stephon Diggs. And I feel like he's got to have a big game. He's got to put up some numbers for them. 1 or 2 touchdowns, 100 yards is what I'd like to really see out of him. But yeah, I hope the Bills Mafia out there is really fired up. It's been a really long time coming for these guys. Chiefs got theirs last season. I hope the Bills can get it done this season. I love both quarterbacks still playing in the NFC, but should the Bills make the Super Bowl, for not only Mike's sake, but all of Bills Mafia, honestly, they've waited so long, so much heartbreak, with their experience in the Super Bowl. I want to see him win one because I know if I were a Bills fan in that situation, I would be begging and pleading and praying, come on, please let us, finally get the Super Bowl. So, Bills all the way should they make the Super Bowl. Like I said, believe Michael Bradley, circle the wagons. The Bills are going to find a way to pull this one off in Kansas City and shock the world.
Yeah, he's going to be really happy too. He has to dive through that flaming table. So, we'll see what he's made of when that happens, how tough he is. But yeah, I mean, I'm rooting for the Bills as well. Just, a fantastic team with a fantastic fan base. They've had a lot of heartbreak in their history, obviously losing 4 straight Super Bowls. But our guy Pancho Villa, their super fan who unfortunately died of cancer, I believe it was last year. He's going to be looking down on him. He's going to be motivating him, and I'm going to pick them to win this game, and hopefully they go on to win it all, like you said, because those fans, they really deserve it, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree more, Noah. And I don't know if you saw it when I sent it in the group chat earlier, but actually a really cool story I saw today was there was a Bills fan who finally finished his last chemo treatment. He is cancer-free, and unlike Michael Bradley, jumped through a table today to show his Bills fandom. So hopefully we can get a video of Mikey doing that, especially should they win this game. But yeah, so guys, we've got a Bills and a Packers Super Bowl as far as me and Noah's prediction goes. We'll have to revisit that next week, obviously, and see whether we were right or completely wrong. Got one of the two. We'll have to remain to see what happens there. But yeah, no, obviously another great weekend of football. And real quickly, before we do wrap up the show, I don't really have a lot to discuss. I'm not going to lie, I'm not the most knowledgeable fan on the subject, but something really cool tomorrow night if you guys got nothing going on, especially if you're going to get a bunch of friends together and help split the cost of the ridiculous pay-per-view. I don't even know what it is without checking, but usually they're really expensive. Conor McGregor will be back in action tomorrow night. And also, if you guys aren't UFC fans and you don't want to see Conor McGregor fight for whatever reason, there also will be Supercross on tomorrow night. So, even though we didn't go over it in great detail, definitely some fun stuff to watch tomorrow night. And me personally, Noah, just for sake of him being Irish, I'll be rooting for Conor McGregor tomorrow night. And I do expect him to win. Like I said, I can't really talk too much in detail on it because I'm not, I don't follow the sport very closely. But yeah, definitely some stuff to watch tomorrow night.
Yeah, I'll be rooting for Conor as well. I just personally love him. I think he's basically just a troll who somehow made it to be one of the best MMA fighters in the world. And obviously as a fellow troll, I gotta respect that. And obviously Supercross, our guy Ken Roxon, he's gonna be, firing, ready to go for that win. But yeah, like we said, Mikey, a cancer survivor who's been through chemo. Are you just gonna let him, stage you up? What are you doing, man? Come on. Dive through that flaming table. Let's get a video of it. Let's get in all the groups. Let's get this victory for the Bills. And, let's see what happens. But obviously a great weekend for sports.
Yeah, most definitely. Unfortunately, I do have to work tomorrow, but thankfully I'm done early, so it's not really going to, affect me being able to watch any sports. But, as we always say, guys, especially on the NFC side, with two guys who are getting up there in age, Aaron Rodgers, obviously will probably play longer than, or rather has more seasons left in him than Tom Brady. But, realistically, neither one of these guys are getting any younger. We may not see them ever again face off in the playoffs. So, take these opportunities while you have them. I will say it sucks when players you love finally get done. With Phillip Rivers, the only thing I wish is I could have been older so that, I could have more greatly appreciated him when he was in his prime and, the Chargers were still in San Diego. So, make the most of it, guys, whether you're a fan or not. You got to sit down and watch Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady go at it because who knows, like I said, if this will be their final meeting or not. And who knows if Tom Brady is going to play next season or not. I know that he probably most likely wants to, and he probably will return, but you just never know. He's getting up there in age. Father Time is doing him no favors.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to appreciate, obviously, guys like Josh Allen and Mahomes on the other side. They're going to entertain this for 15 more years. But like you said, obviously we just saw Phillip Rivers retired. Drew Brees is probably going to retire. Tom Brady probably has one more season at best. Once that contract expires, he'll probably retire. Aaron Rodgers, I believe he's 36 or 37 as well. He doesn't have long either. The guys we've grown up with in this era, they're going to start going really fast. So just appreciate it while it's here. Appreciate the greatness and appreciate the football that we're going to get because it's going to be really exciting.
Most definitely. I want to go ahead and throw. Oh, well, actually, that works too because that was the gist of what I was going for there. David, great show. Thank you, man. We love having you guys here. Mike as well. You guys are our biggest fans, honestly, and every single week, we look forward to seeing what you guys have to say and your feedback and your comments. It may be surprising because we do get to talk to you guys like all day, every day, but, at the end of it, we absolutely love having you guys here. You make the show so much more enjoyable than if you weren't here. But yeah, everybody just enjoy sports this weekend. Another guy on that list, Noah, is Big Ben. I feel like he has one more year left on his contract. And it is for quite a bit of money. So I do expect him to play that, one more year out. But, one more season is not very much time left. Eli's already retired, obviously. Peyton, like you said, Drew Brees more than likely, as we all know. Just unfortunately, the end of our childhood heroes that we grew up with playing quarterback at an elite level in the NFL is, pretty much at its end, unfortunately. I do definitely look forward to what the future holds. My Chargers, as we all know, have Justin Herbert, but at the end of the day, knowing that I'm never going to get to see some of these guys play again or only for another year or two, it definitely isn't something that makes me happy, but it's a part of life.
Yeah, I mean, change, unfortunately, it's going to happen. This is the era, myself and many people grew up with. So to see, guy, good old Nathan Peterman, but
I'm going to revisit this comment now after you finish.
All right, but just to see all these legendary quarterbacks just they're definitely on the way out. You mentioned Ben there. You could even go further and include, a guy like Matt Ryan or, Matthew Stafford. I believe he's 32 as well. Guys that aren't on that level, but they're still very good and they played for so long. They're going to be going as well. So, appreciate it won't last.
Most definitely. And real quick before I wrap this up here, because we have talked so much about the Bills, obviously, Nathan Peterman being a quarterback that played for the Bills, I just want to take the time because I actually just randomly happened to remember this just a week or two ago and was discussing it. I do want to point out that, before Bills Mafia had the guy by the name of Josh Allen, and Nathan Peterman was the quarterback and, having his struggles, nothing against the guy, obviously. Bills Mafia did start a GoFundMe for the guy to give him enough money to retire and never at least play for the Bills again. I just think that that's something that's really funny, especially, the description they put, it was harmless. They weren't like, screw this guy, get him out of here, we hate you, It was nothing along the lines of that. They showed a lot of love and appreciation for him. They're just like, hey, we want to win football games, and unfortunately you might not be the guy to do it, but let's at least give you a bunch of money so that you're not broke. So just something cool and funny that I wanted to point out there real quickly.
Yeah, I mean, some of the best fans in the league, obviously you mentioned that. I think I also saw something where they donated to Lamar Jackson's charity as well. So, yeah, just nothing but respect for that fan base. They're obviously very passionate, but they've also shown over the years that they are very good people as well. So, big respect for them. And yeah, Nathan Peterman, hopefully he can, live it up off that GoFundMe or Kickstarter, whatever it is, and he'll have a good retirement because of it.
Yeah, and Mike saying the best fans in the league. Yeah, like we said, Mike, two things. One, the Bills Nation or Bills Mafia rather is definitely, so deserving of Super Bowl. And two, we got to have Michael Bradley through a table. It's got to happen, whether it's on fire, you're covered in ketchup and mustard. It's got to happen. We got to get a video. It may or may not, no promises, make an appearance on the Sweet Tea Show once it does happen. But yeah, unfortunately, we got to wrap it up. I honestly feel like this potentially is was our best show. Yeah, I had an absolute blast tonight. As always, Noah, thank you for being on here with me, taking the time out of your schedule. I love, discussing sports with you every Friday night. And as I already said, thank you guys so much for being in here and commenting all night long. Definitely, to me personally, my most enjoyable show so far. And just, thank all of you guys for being here.
Yeah, just absolutely fantastic. And obviously, we've had a lot of fun. I just want to do something, real quick. It's not something I do very often. I just want to be completely serious for a minute. Um, I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but obviously, a lot of us in here, um, we knew somebody, and that person did something very bad. And I just want to say, think about your actions before you do it. Don't do something that you could potentially regret for the rest of your life, just because something stupid happened and you overreact. Um, think about the fact that your actions do have consequences. Don't do something you're going to regret, and value all the life around you, because it is something that's very important. As Hank Aaron, we saw that today. It's not something that lasts forever. Eventually, all of us are going to die, but don't do something that is going to make your life live in hell. And enjoy what you have. Don't take anything for granted, and don't make stupid choices.
Most definitely. And, one thing that I'll add to that real quickly, Noah, is, if you guys ever need help for, whatever reason or circumstances in your life, reach out. I know for a lot of people and even myself, sometimes as human beings, it's very hard for us to admit that we need help and, ask for help and, make ourselves vulnerable. But at the end of the day, there's times where all of us are going to need help. We're going to need guidance and, we're going to need maybe some love and support from whether it be a close friend or a close family member. Don't shy from that. Swallow your pride, ask for help, get help if you need it. Or maybe you just need to get away from reality and, get your mind off of things and hang out with a good friend or family member for a little bit. But, when you get to a point in life where you need help, don't be afraid to reach out. And I know that me and Noah and all the guys that are in here tonight, we're all like a big extended family. And for all of our viewers, we view you guys just the same exact way. Whether it's sports, family, personal life, whatever, if you guys ever want to message one of us up, you need advice, you need help, you just want somebody to talk to, don't ever feel like you can't. We're here for all of you guys. We're not just your sports hosts. We're here for you guys just as much as, you're here for us.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that's the best thing that either of us has ever said on this show. These issues are real. People do suffer, and they need someone there for them. And I think the reason a lot of them, unfortunately, take that way out and, they realize they don't want to do it anymore is because they think no one cares about them. And, I just want anyone to know in here, like you said, if they ever need any help or someone to talk to, I'm always available. There's no judgment from me. I've been there myself, unfortunately. It's not a pretty place to be. And, luckily I do have, guys like you said, the Sport Life family, they're very, very supportive. Friends I know personally, very supportive, obviously family. It's nice to have those outlets. So if anyone ever needs help, obviously me and Garth will be there for you, or, anyone in here who's viewing, they'll help as well. But it's nice to have someone there for you. And, I just want anyone to know that there's always someone that will be willing to listen.
Most definitely, no. Most definitely. And with that said, I agree, no, that's probably one of the best things, if not the best thing that we have covered yet. And I'm glad that, I did come up tonight. But with that said, fortunately, back to the old grind tomorrow morning with work. Got to be up at the crack of dawn, unfortunately. But I'll be counting every minute of that workday, looking forward to some sports, looking to see how our predictions turn out, Noah. I really hope that we are both dead on with our predictions and we get a Bills-Packers Super Bowl. Like I said, we'll have to wait and see, until next Friday night. But once more, guys, thank you for joining in. Thank you for coming on with me, as always, Noah.
Absolutely, man. I loved it as usual. And, unfortunately, when we find out it's actually Chiefs-Bucs Super Bowl, we're going to have to come on here and eat our crow. And, unfortunately, we're not going to get the Mikey going through the flaming table, but, we'll see. It's going to be, absolutely fantastic. And, just thank you to all the fans for watching. Obviously, we're still getting better as we go. Like you said, I think this is the most fun we've ever had on a show, just joking around all the time. Even though we had a lot of serious things that we talked about, like Hank Aaron and, Phillip Rivers retiring and, obviously mental health, like we just said, but, still having a lot of fun, still having a blast. We're only going to get better from here. And I think we're actually debuting something else really exciting too with our guy David. So, stay tuned for that. And, I hope everyone has a great weekend watching sports, and we'll see you next week.
Most definitely. We'll see you again. Like I said, every week it varies just by a little bit depending on our schedule and all that, but right around 9 p.m. I think we do a pretty good job of sharing and sending out the link. So just be on the lookout for it again next Friday night. Hopefully me and Noah won't be eating crow, and should the Bucs win, I'll go ahead and tell everybody right now, all week long, Mike Aldridge will be probably even more fired up than I usually am, and you're going to see all kinds of memes and posts in our group chat. Him and David will be going at it, so if the Packers do lose, at least my guy Mike Aldridge will be super fired up. But yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Really excited to talk whatever Super Bowl matchup we have, and thank everybody for joining us as always. All right, guys, have a good night. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your sports.
Thank you for watching the Sports Box. Follow us on Facebook at Sports Box Show, Twitter at Sports Box Show, Instagram at The Sports Box Show. Find us on YouTube and join Outside the Box, our Facebook sports discussion group. The Sports Box is brought to you by our friends at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and use promo code THEBOX at sign up for 10 points. See you next time.